Okay, it should be recording now. It is recording now.
Great.
So welcome, as I said already, welcome to Vienna, to all of you, those that are in the US, but we also have people here from Germany and also Switzerland, Dresden and Basel. But you're in Zurich, Cornelia, right?
Yes, I'm in Zurich.
All right, so you're in Zurich.
Yes.
So we have different nationalities: Austrians, Swiss, Israelis, Americans, and it's going to be an interesting study, I'm very sure. And I'm very glad to welcome Rabbi Shmuly Yanklowitz here, the president and dean of the Valley Beit Midrash. Sorry, I blanked for a second. In Arizona, Rabbi Yanklowitz was named twice one of America's top rabbis, and I can tell you, if you read his books, if you look at his Facebook page, you'll know why. The foreword named him one of the 50 most influential rabbis and one of the most inspiring rabbis in America. Rav Shmuly has a master's from Harvard University and his doctorate from Columbia University, and he serves as the president and dean of Valley Beit Midrash, which is the Jewish Learning Center. He's the founder and president of Ori L'Tzedek, the Orthodox Social Justice Movement, the founder and CEO of Shamayim Jewish Animal Advocacy, and the founder of and president of Yatom, Jewish Foster and Adoption Network. And I cannot not introduce you without mentioning a couple of your books. The Pirkei Avot, the social justice commentary, which we actually used when we had our Pirkei Avot class in our Beit Midrash. The same goes for the Book of Jonah, the social justice commentary, the soul of activism, and last but not least, my favorite, being a fellow vegan, the Jewish vegan. And with these words of introduction, you asked me to tell a bit about our community here, right?
Great. Yes, please.
I'm organizing this as the rabbi of the Jewish liberal community of Or Hadash here in Vienna, where Austria's only progressive community, meaning there is no other non-Orthodox community in all of Austria. And I'm also the only progressive rabbi here in continental Europe. We actually call it liberal Judaism. It is closer to what you know as conservative Judaism in the US. And we just celebrated last year. We really haven't celebrated it because it's still, Corona times, our 30th anniversary. Austria has never had a liberal or reform tradition, so we really are the first non-Orthodox community that is here. We are a very, very active community, a dynamic, vibrant, inclusive. We're also a community that is getting younger and younger. And we count about 150 households or 200 people around about. We want a community that has a common goal, ideals, where members are embraced, come from all Jewish traditions. And we offer a whole range of different things, especially right now on Zoom. We have the Parshat Shavua every week, introduction to Judaism, Hebrew classes, Shabbat and holiday services, which are actually held in Hebrew, German, and English, because we're a very international community, adult education, and what we like to call ourselves is, if you come to visit Vienna, we're your home far away from home. And
Rabbi, roughly how many Jews in Austria?
In Austria, it depends. Usually people say about 9,000. Some numbers go up to 15,000, but I usually stick to the 9,000, with 6,000 being in Vienna.
Okay, and given that Germany is like the founding home of liberal Judaism, why would it have taken so long for liberal Judaism to have had, have a foundation in Austria?
So if you look at Germany pre-Holocaust, about 80% of the communities were liberal communities, and 80% of all rabbis were liberal rabbis. Mm-hmm. But Austria always tried to see itself as a unified community. And also the government wanted to speak only to one Jewish community, so all efforts of creating something liberal in Austria were futile, although there were liberal rabbis or liberally trained rabbis educated here in the Orthodox community. So what happened in Germany after the Holocaust is that most people who refounded the Jewish community in Germany and in Austria were displaced persons who came from the concentration camps and were too weak to continue traveling. They came from a very different tradition. So liberal Judaism is re-emerging and regrowing in those places, in Germany, where I'm originally from, and here in Austria. But we're really growing, and as I said, our community is getting younger and younger, and it's a joy being the rabbi here.
Amazing, amazing. Well, it is great. It is great to be with you and be with members of your community here. Raise your hand if you're currently in Austria. Okay, I see a bunch of folks. Raise your hand if you're currently in Germany. Okay, if you're in Switzerland. If you're in Arizona. Okay, if you're raise your hand if you're somewhere that I haven't listed. Okay, Susan, where are you right now?
I'm in Minnesota, Minneapolis,
yes.
Minnesota.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. Yes. Okay. Anyone else?
I know John Mintzberg.
Okay. Oh, amazing. So we have. Oh, this is amazing. We have Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Arizona, Minnesota. I mean, this is what it means to be in the Jewish community together. I love this. I love this. And to learn Torah globally. So Valley Beit Midrash, we are a pluralistic Jewish learning center looking to foster Jewish thought across boundaries, denominational boundaries, political boundaries, regional boundaries. Everyone is always welcome to join us for classes that we do on a daily basis, more or less. If you wouldn't mind muting yourself if you're not currently speaking, that'd be wonderful. Thank you so much. And Rabbi Lior, thank you for this invite to learn with you all. And I want to invite folks to, we'll have a chance to engage in conversation a little later, but I want to invite you never to hesitate to chat, an agreement, a disagreement. If you want to chat something tangential that you want to ask, you said you're just not interested in what we're talking about, you want to chat something else, that's also wonderful. So let me start with a little chat question so we can hear from folks. What do you think is one of the most biggest or most urgent moral issues of our time? Put this into the chat over there. Of course, there's many, but maybe share one or two. What for you do you feel is one of the biggest or most urgent moral issues of our time? Let's, and then after your answer, put what country you're writing from, if you wouldn't mind.
Sincerity.
Right, if you'll write over there in the chat, slaughtering animals, Isaac and Florian in Austria. Okay, very interesting. Factory farming and the brutality towards animals as Isaac and Florian from Austria. Someone else? Okay, Susan Wood, financial inequality from the USA. Ruth Geis Friedlander, our children's future at times of Corona. Where are you writing from, Ruth? Ari says from Austria, from Montana, living in Austria. Wow, you don't get that every day. Someone from Montana living in government corruption, not taking care of the people. Ali Klein, racial justice, USA. And then she wrote, my family's from Vienna. Oh, love it. Ruth from Germany, thank you. Helen in Arizona, acceptance of lying. Good, that's going to be relevant to our conversation today. Ada says, making people feel well. What do you mean by that? Can you write a little more about what you mean there? Making people feel well. Is that about public health? Is that about self-esteem? Michael in the US says, the issue of anger and intolerance our country is facing. Okay. Karen says, sincerity. Karen, where are you writing from? Pettenberger. Ruth says Israel, actually. Ada says self-esteem. Yeah, thank you. Ali, I'm in the US from New Jersey, 15 miles west of New York City. Ah, I know that area very well. Excellent. Okay, good. Here is your next question, a very different question. What is something you know? What do you know? Okay, Gior Dresden from Basel, Switzerland says, living in bubbles, difficult to understand each other. Yes. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, put in the chat, what is something you know? You know it with all your heart, with all your mind. You're certain of this. It's one of the most certain things you know. What is something you know? Chat, something you know. either because it's logical or it's proven true, or you just know it in your kishkes, you know it in your conscience. Okay, so and then if you don't mind, write your country again. Giors in Basel writes that I am alive. Excellent, right? You remember from the Matrix, the movie The Matrix, and from other ideas, the idea that maybe we're just that, or a number of philosophers. Berkeley was one of the famous philosophers. Maybe we're not alive. This is a false consciousness. But yes, I also believe that I'm alive. Helen says, good people do exist. I love that. We'll come back to that idea. Ari in Montana, Vienna, from Montana in Vienna. I know that love is the most important thing. Love that. Ada, know that we're going to die. That we're going to die. Yes. As they say, we know it's true as death and taxes, right? Susan says, importance of Israel to the diaspora. Okay, very interesting. From US. Ruth says that I love my family. Okay, from Germany. Ali writes, Judaism can provide us meaning in our lives. That is coming from New Jersey. Cheryl in Arizona, the human condition is worth working on. Oh, I love these. I love these. Okay, we could spend all day on these. Now, let me ask you the opposite. What is something you profoundly don't know? What is something that you feel radically uncertain about? Not certain about something that's not true, but rather something you just, and I don't mean a fact, like you don't know a certain math equation. What is something you feel a lot of uncertainty or wonder or curiosity about? Isaac and Florian say the future. Yes, we know very little about the future. Nobody in 2018, nobody predicted what 2019 was going to look like with the COVID crisis, right? Nobody expected the world to look like what it was going to look like. Cheryl says when the pandemic will end. Does life have meaning? And what would that meaning even be? Ari, I don't know if there's anything after death. Good. Olam Haba, the afterlife. Ali writes, does the arc of history really bend toward justice? That's a fascinating question, right? We were talking about this yesterday. Cheryl and I were talking about this 2 days ago around, is progress real? Is it inevitable? Okay, excellent. Okay, so this is going to be a big subject of our time together today. Susan, how can we cross the divide and have civil discourse? A big topic in Parshat Yitro. Parshat Yitro is going to be about this question about what we know and what we don't know. So let me just contextualize for those who aren't thinking about the Parsha every week. It is more difficult if you're not attending synagogue on a weekly basis or showing up consistently to know where we're at in the Parsha. We are, of course, in Sefer Shmot in the book of Exodus, and we are entering Parshat Yitro. Well, I assume in Austria, you're also in Parshat Yitro, right? I should have checked this out before. Okay, because I know in Israel can be on a different Parsha than the diaspora, but I never know if that means all of the diaspora or do parts of the diaspora go in sync with Israel. Rabbi Lior, are you in Yitro? Yes, you're in Yitro. Okay. Rabbi Lior, is the diaspora all in sync on Parsha, or does the diaspora sometimes, some countries follow Israel?
Generally, liberal communities or reform communities follow Israel in all aspects, also meaning holiday observance.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, thank you. So Parshat Yitro is an amazing Parsha following Jethro, Moshe's father-in-law, and it's an amazing, amazing story around the advice he gets around leadership, and the arrival at Har Sinai, and of course the Aseret Hadibrot, the 10 Commandments. Of course, we see the 10 Commandments twice in the Torah, and of course there are discrepancies between the two. The most obvious and meaningful one is Shamor v'Zachor, right? That when talking about Shabbat, in the two different times the 10 Commandments are listed, one time it says Shamor, guard the Shabbat, and one time it says Zachor. Traditionally, that means mitzvot aseh versus mitzvot lo taseh, right? That Shamor means don't do these things on Shabbat, and Zachor means do these things on Shabbat. And it says that God spoke these two words in the same utterance, right? Dibor echad. These were one one utterance and yet two different words kind of emerge. You can understand that in lots of different mystical ways, and thus the revelation contains both of those. The Ten Commandments, there's a great machloket, a great debate in our tradition around how central these are. Some say these are not central. Do not stand up in the synagogue when we read the Ten Commandments, because don't give too much weight to that. That's what Christians do. Christians give a lot of weight to the Ten Commandments, and they downplay the fullness of Torah. And we Jews want to emphasize all of Torah, not just the Ten Commandments. So stay sitting, don't stand up. Others say, no, the entirety of the Torah emerges from these 10. You can find everything from the depths of these 10. Stand for them, love them, celebrate what can emerge from them. In fact, some say that the 10th, all of the others can be found in the 10th, which around coveting. Coveting feels like a strange one, and yet coveting, latachmod, is about desire. And if you look at Buddhism and desire, and that all suffering emerges from desire and attachments, so too the idea here that killing emerges from this type of coveting. Stealing is from coveting, right? Wanting someone else's spouse is from coveting. All idolatry, wanting a different god, is from coveting. So this whole idea of the 10th commandment of desire and the problems that emerge from a lack of gratitude and being overly desirous. And so these 10 commandments are fascinating and very rich, and we could spend the whole time on them, which is what we're not going to do. And of course, the first 5 are generally understood as mitzvot ben adam lamakom, right? They are the spiritual mitzvot between humans or Jews and God, the first 5. And the next 5 are between humans and humans, ben adam lechavero. They are ethical. The first 5 are religious, so to speak. The next 5 are ethical. Of course, ethics are part of religion, but between humans and God, and then between humans and humans. The one that seems the least obvious is honoring one's father and mother. And yet the rabbis understand kibud av v'em as being a channel towards divinity, that having reverence and respect towards one's parents is a pathway towards discovering divinity in the world. I want to remind folks, as we jump into our source sheet in just a moment, that feel free to jump in on the chat with any questions or thoughts, agreements or disagreements you have, and then we'll open up conversation later. Okay, so Parshat Yitro, I am interested in the question of what we know and what we don't know today. And here is what my question is not. My question is not, do you think the Torah or any part of the Torah is from God? Do you think there's any divine origins at all? I know Jews who think every letter is from God. I know Jews who think there is no God. Certainly there's no revelation. None of the Torah is from God. I know everything in between. Okay, there's some revelatory spirit, but not the literal words. Okay, some of these words are from God, but not others. And then, like I said, a whole range of things. We're not debating today, is there a God? Is the Torah from God? If so, which parts? But rather, in what way do we know anything or don't know about anything about God or about Torah or about theology? The basis of epistemology, right? How do we know anything at all, right? And so this is what I want to explore, mostly through Jewish mysticism and Chassidut. So I'm going to share a screen with you now. What do I know? What do I know? Emerging from Parshat Yitro. So good. We're going to start with the Meah HaShiloach, Rab Mordechai Yosef Lehner of Ishbitz, the Ishbitzer Rebbe. The Ishbitzer Rebbe's theology is most famous for the idea of being one of the only Jewish thinkers who denies free will. He denies free will. Generally, it is one of the foundations of Jewish philosophy that humans have free will. That makes the enterprise of the human experience meaningful. Because if we were merely puppets in some divine drama, that would make creation irrelevant and the human experience kind of silly in many ways. Of course, there's a big trend in philosophy today towards determinism, that humans are determined and not free. But the Ishbitzer Rebbe was famous for being a determinist. Okay, and here he wants to pick up on the beginning of the Ten Commandments. The very first word is Anochi. Anochi. Now, what's interesting about Anochi is some of the commentators say the only thing they heard at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, was not the first commandment, not only the first word, but the first letter. But friends, how do you hear an aleph? You can't hear an aleph. That's an amazing thing. You can't hear an aleph. It's a sound of nothingness. And so that's an amazing thing, that maybe all they heard in Revelation was silence, And that was so overwhelming. So he's interested in why the first of the 10 commandments says Anochi. Anochi Hashem Elohecha. I am the Lord your God. And here's what he says. The text does not say ani. If you're going to say I in English, in Hebrew, you're generally going to say ani, not Anochi, even though it means the same thing. For if it had done so, it would have suggested that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, revealed all of the divine light to Israel in its fullness, and that thereafter they would not have been able to go deeper in God's words, for God had already revealed everything. Thus, the kaf, separating the ani from the anochi, teaches that it was not in its fullness, but rather an image, a likeness of the light that God will reveal in the future. And all that a person will grasp in going deeper in the words of Torah will show that until this point, we were in darkness. Day and night suggest this reality. The day is when God opens the gates of wisdom to people. The night is so that the person will not think that one has grasped everything in its entirety. For all that one has grasped is like the nighttime when compared to the daytime that will come afterwards. Okay, friends, so bracketing this whole day and night idea, what is the main point that Ishbitzer Rebbe is saying? Why does the Aseret Dibrot, why do the 10 commandments start with the word Anochi instead of Ani? Feel free to unmute yourself. What do we learn from Anochi instead of Ani?
I think that it's not the full story.
Ah,
right?
Beautiful. Ali says it's not the full story. If it said Ani, you're getting the full story. I love the way you said that, Ali. You're getting the full story, the full picture. You now know what you need to know, right? You got it all. Ani is like God is saying, here I am. I'm showing you my face. I am showing you my essence. You now, this revelation has given you total enlightenment, right? You are in bliss. You are in utopia. You've made it. But it says Anochi. What does the chaf mean in Anochi, which separates it from Ani? Ke'ilu. It means ke'ilu. It's like you know me. It's like you know something. You don't know anything. But it's like you know something. Ke'ilu. It's like you've grasped it. So thank you, Ali. And so it says in the Bechinat Olam, in a 14th century text, the ultimate purpose of knowing is to know that we don't know. The ultimate purpose of knowing is to know we don't know, right? The greatest fools are people who feel that they got it all figured out. Look, I'm a great chacham. I figured everything out in life, right? And so Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel in Man is Not Alone wrote, to become aware of the ineffable is to part company with words, right? Once you realize something beyond, you realize words are profoundly inadequate for what we're trying to describe. Daniel Boorstin wrote, the greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance. The greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance. It is the illusion of knowledge. The illusion of knowledge. People who think they have it all figured out get further and further from actually knowing anything at all. And so the Ishbitzer Rebbe says Anochi instead of Ani. It's like you know something. You're about to get revelation. Whatever revelation is, the closest thing to knowing anything. But I want you to know from the start, it's like you know something. It's like you know me, you don't know anything. Who do you know the best? Who do you know the best if you've ever been a parent? You know your child, right? They emerge from the womb and you hold this child. You watch everything they do. You know them. You watch them take their first step. You watch them eat their food for the first time. You watch them start. You know exactly what they're going to do. They're predictable to you. Oh, and then they get a little older. I'm not so sure I know what they're going to do. They get a little older. Oh, this is really unpredictable. Who are they? And all of a sudden, we're really humbled watching a child, really unaware of what they're going to be, We thought we knew their essence, but actually their essence, is radically different from the manifestation of the choices they're making in their life. And maybe you feel you know a spouse. If you've had a spouse, you feel you know them, right? And yet, how often do you have a disagreement? Oh, I didn't understand what you were saying. I misunderstood what you meant. Oh, I thought you knew me, right? I thought you knew, even the people we know, even the things we know, how much do we truly know it? Okay, let's go back to the text. Let's go back to the text. Okay, so that's the Ishbitzer Rebbe. Okay, here's our second of 4 sources. Why isn't it letting me go down? Oh, here we go. Now it's letting me. Okay, this is from Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, the founder, one of the founders of the Renewal Movement. The Renewal Movement, a very interesting person who emerged out of Chabad, out of the traditionalist Hasidic world, and moved towards the liberal Jewish world, and integrating different faith traditions together. And he writes over here, a real question comes from admitting, Eini Yodeya, I really don't know. The admission of not knowing is the prelude to redemption and revelation. So Moshe Rabbeinu himself said, we won't know with what we shall serve God until we get there. Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest prophet, emerges and says, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. We're not going to know with what we do, how we're going to serve God. Are we going to do animal sacrifices? Are we going to pray? Are we going to go back to Egypt? Are we going to worship the sun? We have no idea. We're going to get to this place, and then we're going to learn what we're going to do, right? Yeah, you all think I have the answers. I'm the prophet you're following. You saw me lead you out of Egypt through the sea, get to the other side. I'm telling you we're going to the promised land, but I have no idea what it's going to look like. I have no idea. And friends, today in our day, how skeptical we should be of the types of leaders who, with the false promises that tell us where we're going to go. We love it. In a world of uncertainty, we want to follow the people. Here's what the world's going to look like in 2050. Here's where we're going to get to, right? The prophets of our day who are going to tell us of the utopia. Now, we talked about this a few days ago, that some people are trying to sell the past, right? Generally, people with a conservative ideology are trying to get us back to the past. The past was great. We got to go back to the past. And people of a liberal ideology are selling a utopia. Oh, we're going to be this perfect place, this ideal society we're going to live in. Follow me. We're going to get to utopia. Of course, we know these are both flawed. The past was not perfect, nor are we ever going to find some utopia in the future, some messianism, if you will. And so we should be very skeptical of those who follow this path of saying, follow me. I know where we're going. I know where we're going. Okay. Now we're going to read from a reform teacher of Chassidut, Lawrence Kushner. He no longer wants to be a reform teacher of Chassidut. He has retired from that. He wants to be an artist. Lawrence Kushner lives in San Francisco. He doesn't want to write books about Chassidut. He doesn't want to be called for speaking gigs. He wants to do art. And he wants you to buy his art. And so his daughter is Noah Kushner. She's also great. She's up in the San Francisco. And here's what Lawrence Kushner writes in this book, God Was in This Place. And I did not know. No, it's not a mistake. I did not know. Oh, I twice. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely God is in this place. And I did not know. And he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. And this is the gate of heaven. Surely God was in this place. And I did not know. The I seems to be redundant. If God does not waste words, what is the significance of Anochi? This simple extra I, which the school of Kutsk identifies as ego or conceit, leads Reb Pinchas Horowitz, the author of a Hasidic commentary on the Torah Panim Yafot, to an important insight. Here we go. It is only possible for a person to attain that high rung of being able to say, surely God is in this place, when he or she has utterly eradicated all trace of ego from his or her personality, from his or her sense of self, and from his or her being. The phrase I did not know must mean my I did not know. So what is Lawrence Kushner teaching us here? The foundation of belief in God is I am not God, right? Which is to say, and I'm not accusing atheists of a moral failing, but as famously been said, the moral failing of an atheist is to believe the job of God is not taken, right? The potential humility of a theist, agnostic, or any theology is, I might be great, but what I know is I cannot be God. I cannot play the role of God. The job is taken, right? And so what he wants to say is you can only discover God through removing ego. Once you challenge the role of the I, the greatness of the I, and find the humility of the I, only then, when we transcend self-centeredness, can the space enter in for divinity to arrive. As the Kutzker Rebbe famously says, where is God? Wherever we choose to let God in. And of course, that doesn't mean just inviting divinity in. It means making space within the self, making space within the self. And this, friends, I think is a great theology of prayer. Someone might say, what did you ever gain from prayer anyways? Did you get a bigger house from prayer? Did you really get a medical intervention you needed from prayer? Well, probably not, right? But what did you gain? Actually, what you gained is what you lost. What you lost was that we are the center. What you lost is that we are all powerful. What we lost is a sense that we're in control of the world. And in losing that, what we gained is what opened up in that space. The power of prayer, the power of communal prayer, individual prayer, is to realize that humility. Once again, not a humility that is disempowering. I'm nothing. I can't do anything important in the world. A humility that's empowering. I am humble, and I get my courage to fight for justice in the world. I get my courage to defend truth in the world from realizing that I am not in control, that I am not the center. And in that humility, I'm emboldened. Okay, friends, here's our last source, and then we're going to open it up. This is translated by Estelle Frankel. She's a really great teacher of Chassidut, and she's translating the Sfat Emet. The Sfat Emet, Rabbi Yehuda Arya Leib, another Hasidic teacher, who says, the simple meaning of this is that the land of Israel is the place where one surrenders one's senses and desires, one's will to God's will. As it is written, go to yourself, right? Lech lecha, from your land. Artsecha is understood here as a pun. Ratzon shacha, your will, right? Artsecha, your land, is coming from Ratzon shacha, your will. All externals must be abandoned for the sake of seeing God's will. Only then is it revealed to a person. And the general rule is that we must listen in order to receive what we cannot possibly understand, namely knowledge of God's infinite nature. To this end, we must continually surrender our knowledge, that which we understand with our minds. Okay, I'm going to come off this source sheet now, come back to the wonderful faces here. Oh, there's everybody. Good. So what we saw here were four ideas around revelation that we see in Parshat Yitro, which raises the question of what do we know and what do we not know? Now, we're not dealing with knowledge in a legal sense. How much do I need to know to make a legal case to win a judgment? How much do I need to know politically in an era of I don't know what this means in Europe, but in America we talk about fake news. Does fake news resonate? That idea? Yes. And so this idea of what do we know, but in a spiritual sense, what do I know? Today, if you're a fundamentalist, right, to be a religious fundamentalist says that the more you know and the more certain you are about what you know, the more religious you are. I am certain there's a God. I'm certain every word of Torah is from God. I am certain I know what God wants of the world, and I'm going to try to convince everyone of it, right? How do we get to a place where you're more religious by being more certain? I don't know how we got to this place, right? It seems to me the premise of Jewish religiosity is this humility of not knowing. Now, but friends, here's the bridge, and then I'm going to open it up for conversation and questions. The bridge is that in post-modernity, we have a morally robust mandate. How do we have a morally robust mandate while we also have a spirituality immersed in an epistemology of uncertainty? If we are going to be theologically uncertain, how can we also be morally active, right? Because we might just say, become a radical relativist, become a cynic. I don't know anything. I don't need to show up at a rally. I don't need to sign a petition. I don't need to join a community. I don't need to pray. Who knows what's out there? Why should I pray? right? Why should I be involved in causes or communities, right? I don't know anything, right? Life is about happiness. Eat, drink, and be merry. Have a good time, because life is going to go quick, and I don't know anything. So just, just be out there for me, right? So let me ask you that question. How do we, first of all, do you agree with the premise I'm putting out there, that the primary thing from Revelation, even before the content, is the humility of not knowing? And do you agree with my other premise that we should be morally active and morally courageous in the 21st century? And if you agree with those, how do we bridge these two together? Okay, feel free to unmute yourself, ask a question, share a thought. I'd love to hear from you. And please, I know it might be annoying, but share your name and the country you're in before you share your questions or thoughts. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
So my name is Ari. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm from Montana, and I'm living in Vienna, Austria. And I think that's really interesting to think about, wanting to connect with other people, wanting to be, trying to make the world a better place for everyone, for everything. But what's important to know is that I think the way to do this is not to force everyone to think the same, because and you have to realize that we are all coming from so many different perspectives and beliefs and value systems. And I think that so I agree with your two premises, and I think that the way to like make the world a better place is by accepting the fact that accepting the fact that you don't know, accepting the fact that you can't know what everyone else knows, and accepting that we're all going to just kind of have to figure it out together.
Beautiful. Okay, Ari's point is wonderful. Ari from Montana, living in Vienna or in Austria. I don't know if it's Vienna. This is fantastic. And so here, friends, we have a challenge. How can we be pluralists? Okay, so skepticism has two different poles, right? Skepticism has relativism and it has pluralism, right? If we're not an absolutist, that we know the absolute truth, then we live in skepticism. Relativism means I don't know anything. Relativism means nothing is true. Pluralism means there's a little truth in everything. So I'm much more of a pluralist that sees a little truth in everything. And Ari's also saying we have to live in a world of tolerance. We have to respect difference. So on the theological side, I'm very comfortable with a high level of pluralism. You want to be Reform or conservative or Orthodox or secular, I love it. You want to be Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist or Jewish or Christian, fantastic. Let's create a space for difference in the world. I'm a little bit less morally pluralistic than I am theologically pluralistic, which is to say, I want to give a little bit less tolerance towards ideas that I think are morally grotesque. So good. So now this is an interesting dilemma. If you're like me, you want to have more theological pluralism, but some room for moral difference, but not so much room, right? Do I want to be? Yes, go ahead, please.
I wanted to clarify my point.
Good.
I do want to clarify that though I do believe that we have to kind of accept that we're all coming from different perspectives, I do agree that there is definitely some moral guide that if someone is the type of person who's trying to erase other people or eliminate their perspective, then those people cannot be tolerated because they will cause everyone else to go extinct, basically.
Okay,
so
great.
We can't tolerate intolerance.
Great. Okay, so this becomes very complicated, of course. How many of you are opposed to the action of female genital cutting? How many of you think female genital cutting is a bad idea? Some people call it female genital mutilation, okay? Now, how many of you are in favor of us actively banning female genital cutting or female genital mutilation, okay? Okay, this becomes one of the active test cases. Why in tribes throughout Africa were they cutting the clitoris of women, right? Because it is immodest for a woman to have sexual pleasure. It's immodest for her to have sexual pleasure. So let's take a little girl and do this. And so many people who who detested this, arrived and said, we should ban this. This is horrific, what you're doing to these girls. Many of these girls are dying. We don't believe it's immodest to have sexual pleasure for a woman. This is horrible what you're doing. And others said, whoa, who are you? Who are you, white folks from Europe and America, coming over here to our tribes in Africa and telling us what to do? We've been doing this for millennia. And you colonialists are going to come here and tell us how we should treat our girls? Like, get out of our land. And all of a sudden, this becomes the test case for what we understand as our feminism and our human rights ideas that we want to spread throughout the world. And yet, the humility of saying, okay, you're Africans, we don't understand your communities, you guide what you think is right. Okay, what about the case, how many of us think it would be horrific to cane someone for engaging in a same-sex marriage or same-sex relationship? Horrible. Okay, how many of us think we should ban that from happening around the globe? Okay, so there's cases, this is another common case where we would say we want to spread our basic understanding of human dignity, of human rights, and other groups are going to say, look, our religious worldview says we should cane these people, we should do these horrible things to them. Okay, it goes on and on. Let me give another test case in Europe. Who are my vegan friends over there? Was it Isaac and Florian? Who are my vegan friends? Oh, yeah, yes, Rabbi Lior. Okay. Oh, no, you said kind of. Okay. So how many of you think it is it is bad that in Europe there are people trying to ban shechita? It's bad that they're trying to ban kosher slaughter. How many of you think that? Okay. All right. Okay, so very interesting. And how many of you think the world would be better if there was no slaughter of animals at all? You might be very fine as a carnivore. It's totally fine. Okay, interesting. So I fall into the camp where I would love to see a world of no animal slaughter. That's my personal view. And yet I will defend the right to have shechita, of the religious freedom that happens in Europe. Okay, that's a whole conversation. But this is an interesting case. Or for example, we can hold conflicting ideas when it comes to freedom. For example, I suspect most of us think that the idea of abortion is a bad idea. The idea of killing a fetus is a bad thing. And yet there are many times I imagine many of us would think that this would be the right choice to make, right? It would be the right choice to have an abortion. And that regardless of whether it's the right choice or not, that a woman should have a right to choose. Okay, I know this is a complicated matter, but one might say abortion itself is a bad thing, and yet it should be the right choice at many times. And I'm pro-choice, even though abortion's a bad thing. Just like we would say killing is a bad thing. Killing is a bad thing, killing a human being, and yet people have the right to kill. You have the right to self-defense, or you have the right to defensive warfare, right? So there are these contradictions. So now we go back to our question: theological pluralism, morally less pluralistic. Now let's go back to this question: how do we balance not knowing, not being uncertain, with being moral activists? How do we balance these two things? Feel free to unmute yourself.
I have two thoughts. One is just, which is not, I know, the focus of our conversation. I think it's really important not to equate abortion with killing people. So I just want to be
no, I would never equate that. I was giving different examples there. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
I am thinking about the fact I never really considered that the 10 Commandments occur in the Parsha that is named for someone who is not Jewish. Yes. And sort of the lesson in that about the sort of humility and that we don't have all the answers in our tradition, that there is moral truth to be found. There's truth to be found when we sort of have a shared moral understanding of the way that we want to act in the world that can come from traditions that aren't our own. And I hadn't sort of thought about that with Yitro before, and I think that is an important lesson for us in humility about what we do and don't know.
Great. So Allie Klein in New Jersey is sharing something really helpful us here. There's two different positions on Yitro. Some say Yitro joins the Jewish conversation here before the revelation at Sinai, and that the text is out of chronological order. Others say, what did I just say? After? Okay, whatever it's that he joins after and it's out of chronological order. Others say he joins before. The big difference there is some people think Yitro converts and becomes a Jew, right? Others think he never converts, he is a Gentile. Okay, so that's an interesting distinction. In either case, the mainstream view, and then he leaves the Jewish community, goes back home. So let's take the view that he never converts, he's a Gentile. The Parsha is named for him, for a Gentile. Not only is it named for him and what we learn from him, but he fundamentally changes the system. He changes how we make decisions, how we govern, how we lead. He says, Moshe, it's too much for you to be making all these decisions. You need to build communities, democratic communities. You need to build structure. You need to empower other voices. This can't all be on you. And this is also one of the answers. I'm glad Ali moved us in this direction as to how we balance uncertainty with moral community building, right? What do? I don't know everything. So we build community and we lead together through consensus. We lead through dialogue. None of us has the answer. And so we come together to create change. So thank you for that, Ali. Someone else, please.
I think one of the things or the impacts of the pandemic is that a lot of people in the world thought they had some certain knowledge and understanding of their life and their values and everything have been very severely challenged, what we've been through. And I'm wondering if that's not part of the factor of why people are looking for different things that seem, that at least some of us, bizarre or different, and a lot of the angst that we're all going through now because of the uncertainty that has expanded greatly. And I'm in Arizona.
Amazing, Michael. Michael, thank you for that. In Arizona, this is a fascinating thing. As we said earlier, what happened in 2019 was completely unpredictable. Yes, I mean, people talked about pandemics in abstract, but no one predicted the world would change in 2019 the way that it did. And so people have two different options. They can move towards radical uncertainty. Oh my goodness, we have no idea what's happening in the world and what next year is going to look like. Or what we see among many is the opposite. Doubling down on certainty, doubling down on conspiracy theories, on religious fundamentalism, on political fundamentalisms, right? And so it really is a very profound moment around what we do with uncertainty. Many people, they allow it to channel them towards fear, and fear can move towards hate. Others, once again, it moves them towards humility and towards learning and towards questioning. And so, Mike, it's a great path you're moving us down. Who else wants to share? Please don't be shy. You can bring up anything you'd like or challenge anything.
Can you just repeat sort of what the guiding question was for her sharing? Yeah.
So one question is emerging from how we know what we know on a religious or Jewish level, right? And then the question that's emerging from that is how we're balancing, given our uncertainty, our moral leadership with our skepticism, with our theological and intellectual not knowing, right? And how do we bring that to our community building? How do we bring that to the political landscape? And what do you do with that contradiction if you experience it as a contradiction, theological uncertainty with moral certainty? Hi, Susan, in Minnesota.
Hi, Susan from Minneapolis. I had the privilege of hearing Dr. Micah Goodman from Israel speak to us in Minneapolis on Sunday, and he talked about his desire for a more Talmudic approach to our lives, which would be, instead of looking at the world from Torah, you look at the world Talmudically, which means you ask questions instead of having the answers. And when you ask questions, you understand that you are obligated to look at things. You look at things and study things that you don't live by. You have Hillel and Shammai. You study them both, but you act by Hillel in this instance. So you are always questioning things, and you know that there are two ways to do things. You study them both, but you do the one that's been given to us in Talmud, but you expand your thinking, this radical uncertainty, into radical questioning.
Yep. I love it, Susan. This is so important. And the Talmud, we cannot emphasize enough as one of the top 5 great Jewish intellectual contributions to the world, not in necessarily the product itself, but in the process. That we are not a people of the book. We are not a people of the book. We are a people of constant evolution of ideas and reinterpretations, right, of our text. And that Talmudic process that is in place of argumentation and reinterpretation, and like Susan says so crucially, of the hearing the other side, preserving the other side. Now, I'm going to critique something, to be provocative for a moment, that is something we probably all hold dear. But again, my goal in learning is not to make people comfortable. My goal in this session is to make people uncomfortable, because I think productive discomfort is where we learn. And so if you feel any discomfort in the learning, that's my goal. And then to unpack that. If I go to a class and I leave feeling comfortable, like what was that? I might as well go meditate. You know, I want to feel challenged. I want to be uncomfortable. I want to be a little mad even. I want to be a little mad. Oh, that person said something that rubbed me the wrong way. What was that? What was that? And so so let me say something. I'm going to attack something we hold dear. We talk a lot these days about safe spaces. We talk a lot these days about trigger alerts, right? I love those things. I want to be in a safe space where we can share, where I feel I'm with people of the same values. Nobody's going to trample on the things I hold dear. I want trigger alerts because we all live with trauma, different degrees of trauma, and I don't want things thrown upon me that are gonna reinvoke, emerge with those traumas. And yet, we learn that we can construct a life that is entirely safe. I'm only in safe spaces. I'm away from all my trigger alerts. I don't have to encounter any ideas. I only go to news sources that tell me what I want to hear. I don't have to encounter the other news. I don't have to counter the other religious types of people. I don't have to engage with things that make me feel unsafe or unloved or challenge me, right? And so this is a really difficult thing. And Susan is right. This is the opposite of the Talmudic approach. I need to quote and argue to defend this. That the other view has a space, that has a right to a space here, right? Imagine if we got back to that. Because if you look, let me speak about America for a minute, because I know nothing about Europe. It's been 20 years since I lived in Europe, and it was only 6 months. I lived in Aix-en-Provence in southern France, and I loved Vienna, and I loved Switzerland, and I loved Germany, and I miss it, and I can't wait to give you all a hug in person if you're comfortable with hugs. I would love, I'll look forward to seeing you all over there. And but let me say something about America, because I don't, when I was there, you remember Jean-Marie Le Pen? I was out there marching in a protest against Jean-Marie Le Pen in southern France. It was a great moment. It was a great moment. And in any case, in America, the great political divides, actually, there's nobility to the issues on both sides. If you think about these issues, think about the issues of liberties and freedoms. Think about the issues around welfare, around the issues of free speech. If you look at the great divides, you can really make a great case in abstract for what both sides is trying to defend. What both sides are trying to defend. If you look at, in war, you look at doves and you look at hawks. If you look at really the great debates around prisons and punitive justice. Now, we're in a whole different place today. We don't debate the noble ideas anymore. We're debating mistruths and lies and things like this. But imagine if we got back to that place religiously, where we were debating the deepest religious ideas that made us uncomfortable. Politically, we were really grappling with profound ideas that make us uncomfortable. And Susan's point there, I think, is so rich around how we can preserve and engage in uncomfortable dialogue that brings things to surface. All right, we only have a few minutes left, but I'd love to hear from one more person if we can. Yes, hi, you pronounce your name Ada, right?
Ada. I don't know whether my sharing is to your question or to the point, but
that's okay. Yeah.
What I would like to share is this not knowing. I love the place of not knowing. It makes me feel better because I don't know the place of knowing. Because every time I think I know something, well, it might be not true. So actually, maybe it's my personality, I don't know what, maybe it's my age. The place of not knowing, this makes me, I think, being a better person even.
Okay, beautiful. So this is beautiful. So thank you for that. This is not just some intellectual concept. This is also about our emotional lives. This is about our healing. This is about our happiness. And let me give one example. You've heard this many times, that babies are born with their fist clenched, right? And how does everyone die? If you've been with someone when they die with their hands open, right? And one of the things we can take from there is when we're born, we almost think, we don't know yet that we need anybody, right? We're unaware of the other, right? Piaget writes a lot about this in developmental psychology around desire and the self and the boundary of self and other, right? We don't know, but when we die, we profoundly are reaching out. We know how interdependent we are, how much we need others. And what's amazing about that also is the liberation of being in control, right? That part of the maturation process is realizing that we are not in control of our lives, right? There's many realms of responsibility. But what Ada's saying here, when we are certain about where I need to be in 10 years from now, what I need to have, what I need to be engaged in, right? We're holding very tight. We're holding the reins very tightly. We're trying to steer the ship. We're trying to ride the horse very, very tightly. And it's very stressful to try to be in such control, holding everything so tightly. When we let go, we say, you know what? I don't know where I need to be in my life. I don't know where we're going. I don't know where I'm going. All I can do is trust the integrity of the path I'm walking on. Trust myself and my clarity, and trust the path I'm going on, being unsure of where it's going to lead. And that can lead to bliss. That can lead to liberation of not needing to hold the reins so tightly. Rabbi Lior, I'm very grateful, and I want to hand it back to you for our last 2 minutes for anything else you want to add. I'm very grateful to build these bridges together with your Or Chadash and with your wonderful community members. I want to invite friends to join us at Valley Beit Midrash for learning, and we want to join you over there when we can be in presence in your community with you. We're going to, God willing, come visit and be in solidarity together in our communities.
I usually give like a short summary of what you've been saying, but I have like these cards which are written back to front with all the wonderful things that you've been saying, and that's why I find it so amazing that there are so many things that you've been sharing. And I think you shared one very important thing is uncertainty. And like Ada, I love uncertainty. I think, and the whole point of the Talmud is that there is not one single answer. There are several answers to several questions. They're answers that contradict each other, and they're all valid. They're all recorded in the Talmud. We've gotten not only politically, but also religiously in a lot of ways to a place where we only want one truth, which has never existed. And that's why it's so important for us to actually hear different voices, hear the different movements, because truth is just like everything else, uncertain, and it's relative. And I think theologically, it's very, very important to know that there can never be certainty. Somebody wrote, I don't know what's going to happen after death. There's little written about Mashiach. There's little written of what's going to happen during the Messianic age. There's even less written in the Tanakh, in the Bible, about what is happening after death. Point being, we live in this life. What's happening after this life is not, we're not supposed to know. We can only make change and affect change, social change, religious change in this world. So in this world, we have uncertainty. We have even more uncertainty about Olam Haba. So I think that's very important. And I think that is the whole point of Judaism, is asking the questions, and not letting not stopping ever to ask questions. I mean, the Torah was given to constantly ask questions. The Kli Yakar in the 16th century says, "Matan Torah lo ratza Adonai lagbil yom yadua." On the giving of the Torah, Adonai did not want to give a known day, so every day would be a day in which we receive Torah again, and in which we again question Torah and question our way of living Torah. So I think, and certainly, social certainties are very important, but as we've seen, we're also fluid with them. Religious uncertainties should be welcomed, and we should be asking for them. And what I'm thinking today won't be what I'm thinking tomorrow. You know, that's why we read Yitro last year. We're reading it again this year, and we have changed. The text has not changed. So thank you so much, Rabbi, dear friend, for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. God bless. Great to see you all.
Shabbat shalom to all. Join us again
Shalom.
next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Toda rabba.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much. Shabbat shalom.
Rabbi Shmuly?
I think
Rav?
he's already left.
Rabbi Shmuly?
He already left, I think.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if we could get his PDF, but I'll check with him or his assistant.
I will email him and
Okay.
tell him.
Thank you, Rabbi. It was a pleasure.
Great having you. Feel free to join us again next week. I'm not sure who's going to be joining us next week, but we'll have it every week. Next week it's actually Rabbi Rachel Sabbath Beit Halachni.
Oh, she's awesome.
Rabbi.
She's
Reformed
awesome.
Rabbi from Massachusetts. In the end of the month, we'll have Rabbi Shel Peretz, who is from Ziegler in Los Angeles. Feel free to join us every week.
Rabbi Rachel grew up in Minneapolis.
Oh, did she?
She did,
We'll
yes.
We'll actually be having Rabbi Weinberg joining us also from Minneapolis.
Okay.
So
I'm going to look up your website. I'll look up your website.
Or on Facebook.
Thank you.
Check it out.
And I love Vienna. I was there in 2009 and just had a blast. I love your city.
Great.
Thank you. Toda rabba.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Lehitraot.
Shabbat shalom. Danke, Lior.
Gerne.